The construction's always bad up here. They're always working on it, I'm talking years and years, one section at a time. I say. They'll do a 2-mile stretch for a year or two, then move on to the next 2-mile stretch, then the next. Fix a bridge here, an overpass there. By the time they get to the end of this 10-mile stretch, it's time to do it all over again. Rinse and repeat? Ha! Rinse and repeat. I like that. I'll tell you, that's my wife in the shower. In there forever. Hell on the utility bill. Rinse and repeat. With his mask bunched up down past his mouth, spittle flying as he yammers on. If he has COVID, then I have COVID. Ah yes, my wife. 33 years with that woman. Wouldn't trade her for anything. Although, I might have to ask the make and model. He slaps his thigh while his laugh echoes around the car's interior, veers into the opposing lane, overcorrects, swerves back and forth. From the trunk of the car, there's a thump, thump, thump. Suddenly, I get nervous. Speaking of makes and models, you dang old millennials, you don't even know what a real car is. How everything's made of fiberglass nowadays. Plastic bumpers. Back then, cars were made of real stuff. I'm starting to not like my Uber driver. The mothball smell in the car. The mean eyes behind his glasses. His forearms were thick and sprouted with grey hairs. I noticed the large hands gripping the steering wheel. Arthritic knuckles. Probably has the old man's strength. Those hands got a hold of your neck, or your face, or eye socket. Good luck getting them pried loose. The trunk thumps again, more frantic. Does he hear it? Maybe he's playing dumb. I tell you, a loud thump cuts him off. Do you hear that? He asks. All I can do is nod. My mouth is dry, palms sweaty. I'm just gonna pull over. Check it out. He pulls off to a side street, parks and slides out. He walks around to the trunk. I step out of the vehicle after him, and for a brief second I think of running. A very dumb idea that vanishes as soon as it arrives. He stares down at the open trunk, the large black bag that I'd loaded back there. The bag wriggles and squirms. What in the... He says to himself, and looks back at me, and the look on his face is pure confusion and terror. The knife goes across his neck quickly. He reaches out to stop the blade, and cuts his hand. I get about 7 quick more jabs, into his gut and groin area before he tries to run, but not before I topple his heavy body back into the trunk. As I drive his car away, I start to laugh. Did the cars from the good old days have this kind of trunk space? I pulled up to the gas station. Outside was a young man, about 20, staring up at the sun. He had long, greasy black hair, and even though it was over 100 degrees, he was wearing a black sweatshirt and black pants. I hoped that he was not my passenger, but he began making his way slowly to my car. Are you Michael? I asked him, but he didn't respond. He just opened the back door and sat down. Is your name Michael? I asked again. Yeah. I'm Michael, he said, talking slowly. He was definitely high on something. I should have cancelled the trip, but I desperately needed the money. The destination popped up. It was about 40 miles away, in the middle of the desert. I zoomed in on my map, trying to see what was there. It looked like there was nothing but sand. Where you headed? I asked him. To the desert. Are you sure you put in the right location? He nodded and closed his eyes. I've had lots of strange passengers, but this just seemed off. I wondered if I were going to get robbed out in the desert, but that seemed unlikely. I started driving. About 10 miles out of town, I turned onto a narrow gravel road, barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. According to the GPS, I was supposed to follow this road for 20 miles. I didn't see another car the entire way, or pass any sign of civilization. Nothing but cactuses on the side of the road. What was this road even for? Did it lead to some old mine? After 20 miles, I turned off onto an even narrower dirt road. It was in awful condition, and even though I only had 2 miles to go on it, it took nearly half an hour. Finally, we arrived outside a ramshackle wooden building, about the size of a small barn. There were no other cars by it. I turned to Michael, who was sleeping in the back seat. He hadn't said a word the entire trip. We're here. Wherever here was. He didn't budge. I gently nudged his arm. No reaction. I felt his pulse. It was there, but faint. Very faint. As I was considering what to do, Michael's phone rang. I answered it. "I see your car," a raspy voice said. "Take Michael out and bring him into the building. He's sick, he needs to get to a hospital." "No. Take him into the building. There's a shaft, throw him down it." "What?" "Throw him down the shaft. We will take care of him." Panicking, I got out of the car and yanked Michael out. I then sped away, leaving him lying face down in the burning sand. When I was about a half mile from the building, I saw 3 small figures emerge and drag Michael inside. That was the last time I ever drove for Uber. I'm starting to wonder if my Uber will ever come. My battery is dwindling and I'm standing all alone outside of a club on the edge of town. It's closed for the night and everyone has gone home. While I wait, let me tell you what happened. So, this club has gotten a new life in recent years, as a sort of revitalised hipster dive. It was once a biker bar, almost closed down after a slew of stabbings, and was reborn under new ownership. You know the kind of place, PBR and Fireball for $5, a couple of old school arcade games, a string light on a patio, American spirits for sale and a cigarette machine. If you got $1 for every beard, glasses and plaid combo you saw, you'd walk out there with enough money to hit one of the classier joints in town. My friends and I decided to stay until last call. The bar staff were out of there quickly as we exited, and I realised I'd left my cigarettes on the back patio. I told my buddies not to wait up and I jumped the fence, grabbed the pack, and came back out to an empty parking lot. The silence was eerie. Couldn't even hear the sounds of the city. I made my way across the lot towards the car and fished my keys out of my pocket. As I got closer to the vehicle, I clicked on the unlock button on my key fob. The interior dome lights slowly turned on. Did I see what I think I just saw? In the back seat. I thought I saw a shadowy figure there, but I was too far away to be sure. I instinctively clicked the lock button, and the lights went out. About 20 yards away, I clicked the unlock button again, and the dome light slowly lit up the inside. There was no mistaking it. Someone was sitting back there. The silhouette was all wrong though. Clearly human of some kind, but like the skull was 50% bigger than average. The head was crooked. The eyes were white and big, like glowing ping pong balls, as the thing in my back seat smiled at me and stared. A large nose parted the veil of black wet hair that cascaded down its face. I instantly locked the door with the remote and the car went dark. I darted back to the club, looking over my shoulder the entire way. Nothing followed. I was more than a little buzzed, and past experiences had led me to mistrust the police, so I decided to get home and come back during the day to get my car. Surely this was all just my imagination. I received an alert on my phone that my driver would be arriving. The driver had long black hair, and their face was obscured in the photo. Across the parking lot, my headlights turned on. The first person I ever drove was my mother, a few days after her funeral. She came to me while I slept. I was blurry-eyed and still half asleep when I agreed, fetching my keys and wandering to the car. It was only once I was in the car that I realised what was happening. She didn't speak much, just said she needed to get to the airport. That's how they all are. I found only half aware. They ask to go to the airport or the ferry or sometimes the train station. They show up in the dead of night or in the early morning dawn, standing alongside my bed. Once I get them to where they want to go, they just sort of disappear. I guess it's their way of moving on. Most are peaceful and calm. They died of old age or some sickness. Sometimes, though very rarely, they died from some sort of tragic accident. They would appear in the manner they died, broken, torn apart. That became my life until I met Harriet. She was my light, and together we had a child named Thomas. I still continue to drive, not often, but just a few times a week. Harriet knew, of course, and she told me she understood. Though sometimes I felt as if she was simply humouring me. And then Thomas died. We knew it was coming. Leukemia. He was diagnosed too late, not long after his 7th birthday. He lived for 2 more months. I took to drinking. Hard, but it completely broke Harriet. She would sit up late into the night, staring at the darkness at the end of our bed. I'd drink downstairs until I passed out, but one night she found me there. She woke me, clawing at my shirt, her eyes bright and frantic. "Sam, you'll see him when he comes to you. You'll see him. Let me speak with him, Sam, please." Told her I'd never seen a child, only people our age or older. She wouldn't believe me. She started screaming and she got violent. I had to leave, I had to. Couldn't take it, but I wasn't in any condition to drive. I woke up in the hospital, barely lucid. Machines hooked to my flesh, wires threaded through my veins, but Harriet was there. I saw her through the haze as doctors surrounded me, as they fought to keep me alive. The police were there too, asking questions I couldn't answer. Through it all, Harriet stood beside me. It was days later that I finally woke up, in the dead of night, but still in hospital. I turned to my side and Harriet was there. I reached out to her, I asked her what happened. For a long moment, she was quiet. Finally, she reached out to me. It was then I noticed that the skin of her wrist had parted, her arm bloodied. Her hand slipped through mine. "Sam," she spoke softly, "I need a ride."